Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of DMZ, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, my knowledge with this series, this is my only experience of this story. I've never, I'm not the comic book / graphic novel dude, so I've never read the original graphic novel that this is based on. To my understanding, Rosario Dawson's character, Alma, this isn't 100... I think it's kind of like... Either this is like... Her character is either like a minor character in the graphic novel that they kind of built the show around, or... I want to say I remember that's what they were talking about, because I know they talked about it a little bit at the most recent... It's something I've heard about for a little while, but I think they talked about it even more at the most recent... DC Fandom. But I want to say that was the premise behind it. It's like, yeah, like, Elma's not the biggest character. She's like actually a smaller character, but the show is kind of built around her as kind of like the main protagonist. I want to say, because I think, based on what we saw in this show, I want to say the graphic novel, once again, someone who hasn't read the graphic novel, I get the feeling, and this could be my misunderstanding, that it follows multiple different stories. So... there's probably like a lot of characters from the graphic novel, but she kind of is kind of the center focus. I guess it kind of gives you a little freedom to kind of like build this world around a character that didn't have a lot of story in the graphic novel. I don't think she's an original character, like as in like they made her up for the show. I could be mistaken, but I want to say she is from the graphic novel. She's just not a big character. She's a smaller character, I think. Whatever the case may be. It is interesting to know. Obviously... I also think, I'm curious, are they ever really going to get into the ins and outs of it? Because obviously, like, this show gives me, like, The Last of Us type of vibe. I'm curious, will they ever go into the ins and outs of what went wrong? Like, what happened? Probably not. It's just kind of like, a thing happened in this world, we'll keep it as vague as possible, because that's not the important thing. It is always just like an apocalypse situation, typically. It's like, no. What started it doesn't matter a lot of times. It's just how people have dealt with it in the aftermath. Because we get tiny peeks to the outside world just because she starts outside of the DMZ, but then like she goes in looking for her son. Obviously, the Scale thing wasn't a surprise to me, because I was like, the moment they introduced Scale, I was like, that's going to end up being her son Christian. I was surprised when it turned out Parko was, well, she did say that he was like in jail, so it crossed my mind, but I was like, is that what, the way he was treating Scale, but I thought was like, oh no, like I took you in, kid, I raised you as my own. It was actually kind of a surprise when it was like, no, Parko is the baby daddy that she thought was dead, because he was locked up in like the 9th precinct or something like that, and it's like, yeah, like no one supposedly got out of there, but I guess that's how Parko got his reputation. I think it's so interesting because like so much that goes on in the DMZ, I guess it's almost like a dead zone to the outside world, because like nothing that goes on in there is like permeated outside of the DMZ, because Alma went in here like with some information being like, oh, like the moment she hears about Wilson, she's like, wait, Wilson? The orderly? I'm like, wait, what? He was an orderly before he became essentially like one of the shop callers in the DMC? Not DMC, this isn't Devil May Cry, DMZ. Which I thought was so interesting, who's played by Hoon Lee, which I'm going to say, like, the first thing ever, I'm not well-versed in everything Hoon Lee's done, but I want to say the first thing, at least to my recollection, I ever saw him in, is Banshee, where he played Job, which I loved him as Job. Like, I just freaking love the show, Banshee. Like, it's such a good show if you've never seen it, and he's so good in it, and I want to say that's the first thing I ever saw him in, like I said, to my recollection, so... It was kind of interesting knowing him and Alma have, like, the past that they have. But, like, the reason why I was kind of bringing that up really quickly is because Rose was like, you would know not to make any deals with Wilson if that was the case. Like, you would know not to make any deals with him, not let him get his hooks in you. If you were from the DMZ, you would know that. So, that's why I'm like, that's so interesting that none of that permeated outside. And what makes me wonder, the person... who took her into the DMZ, did she already know ahead of time? Because Alma never outright said anything at the end of the episode being like, oh my god, Scale's my son, Parko. It's like, no. Like, none of that was... I guess you could infer from the question she was asking, but it makes you wonder, did she know? So I know that actress who brought her in, I'm like, I know that actress from something, I just can't place it. I have to look into, like, why she looks so familiar. But like I said, especially like that shot of Alma when she first gets there, that establishing shot when she's like walking down the street, I'm like, definitely gave me some The Last of Us vibes. It's not like we're dealing with like a zombie thing. It is just like bombs went off and like they were, as Parko puts it later on, which Parko was played by Benjamin Pratt. I was about to say Pratt. I want to say Doctor Strange might be the most recent thing I saw him in, the first Doctor Strange movie. Maybe. I'm not well versed in everything filmography's done, but I'm like, Law and Order, OG Law and Order. There was some crime drama he did not back in the day. It was a couple years ago. It might have been the mid 2000s. He did something. I can't remember. It's like I can slightly remember. I can't grab it like on the top of my head. But I do feel like there's some, other than Doctor Strange, I feel like there was something more recent I've seen him in, but I can't place it. But it is interesting that he's kind of running for governor in the DMC. I love that line. I keep saying, damn you, Devil May Cry, because I keep saying DMC instead of DMZ. I'd pretty much have to say, like, demilitarized zone. It's just so I don't end up saying DMC, because I'm just so used to that. So that's like, my nerdy brain goes there before it goes to DMZ. But nevertheless, because also, like, the other part of my brain goes DMC, DBZ, so like DMZ is just not going to like register my brain yet. Nevertheless, I like that line of like, right, they say this is supposed to be a DMZ. They walled us in, but we're going to make them see us, recognize us. And so he's trying to gather up basically all the gangs. He's trying to get their support. The way his right-hand man, which that dude, I want to say most recent thing I've seen him in was Animal Kingdom. He plays Pete. But I've seen that actor in a few other things too. But I want to say Animal Kingdom might be the most recent thing I've seen him in. But his right-hand dude is like, 6 out of the 8. So and I'm assuming one of those is Wilson's people didn't show up, plus some other gang that didn't show up, because he's trying to get the support. I guess as long as he gets the majority vote, that's all that matters. But yeah, he's gathering up all the other gangs to have, like, it's like, well, not unless, like, he's probably not unless he counts as one of them, so maybe the only other one that is like 6 of the 8 showed up. So it might be like 6 of the 8 plus him making 7, and the one who didn't show up was Wilson's group. So maybe that's all that was to it. So Wilson might be the only one who didn't show up, I'm assuming. But not unless it is reference, like, because that's why I'm curious. Like, is it like 6 plus him makes 7, or is it just his group doesn't count? And that's, I should have paid more attention when they were circling around. That's why I'm just curious. Like, could it be like there are 2 other gangs that didn't show up, or is it just Wilson's that didn't? Either way, him rallying everyone for him to kind of be head honcho, for him to be governor. Then, like, obviously the whole skill situation. That's such an interesting, and I guess it's a power play of like, oh, I'm gonna put your name on the board, like on the building. It's like a public hit list, because it's like, if your name's not scratched out, that means you're next on the list. So watch out. So, and even that little girl being like, she kind of is like, right, like, what did that person do? And it's like, oh, they were rude. And she's like, my dad was rude, and that's why he was, like, one of your targets. And it's kind of like, she was like, that's stupid on him, or something like that. I guess just recognizing how, just showing you, like, at least some instances of, like, kids growing up under these circumstances. Because the time frame seems to be, it's been 6 years. In all of those 6 years, Alma's looked everywhere, and I guess, like, she was hoping that he wasn't still in the DMZ, because it's like, now after all this time, she's finally checking the DMZ, because she couldn't get there beforehand until she was able to sneak in. So, but essentially, as she said, she's like, right, I've checked both countries, and so, like, if a shot is fired, the DMZ is kind of like the middle ground stuff. Like, that was what Rose was getting at. It's like, we have all this gang shit going on while there's literally 2 armies on both sides wanting to fight. And there's even that red line. It's like, Alma was told, like, if a single bullet flies through that, like, lands over here, it's going to, like, be an all-out war again. Like, both sides, because it's going to be, like, any peace treaty, like, everything, this, because the DMZ is supposed to be kind of a neutral zone, but it's like, yeah, it's like the Wild Wild West in the middle of a literal, like, civil war of sorts. So it's kind of like, that's what almost like, really, we're in here infighting about this place is occupying about 300,000 people while shit's going down on both sides. Like, it seems like pretty insignificant, but it is that thing of, yo, this is our kingdom. Like, it's time to grab up what we can when, you know, when the world's kind of thrown into chaos. Let's kind of make the most of it, and you know, whatever we can get in this life, you take it, you know. So it is kind of heartbreaking about the Rose thing. Granted, she knew that Alma, like, was from the outside. I'm like, there's no way the show's going to let you live knowing what you know. But, like, because I think that's going to be a beautiful and sad and tragic element to the show is Alma's not in here like, oh, I'm not here to save the day. I'm here to save one person. It's kind of, once again, I'm not trying to harp on it too much, but it's like, it is like a story that I'm familiar with, like The Last of Us, of like, yeah, I'm here to do one job. I'm not here trying to, like, save the world. It's like, yeah, like, there's one thing I'm here to do. I'm supposed to deliver this kid. That's it. In almost cases, like, I'm not here to save anyone else from the terrible situation. I'm trying to find my son and get him out of the DMZ. That's it. I can't save anyone else. The only person I can save is my son, no matter how tragic someone else's story is. So it's like, yeah, she told Rose she'd come back. It's like, even if you came back, what were you going to do? Were you going to try and get Rose out of here? There's no way you were going to do that. You know, you were just trying to give Rose some hope. And I don't know if Rose is probably like, yeah, you're not going to come back to help me. It's like, whatever way you got in, it's going to be your way out, and you're never going to, like, come back for me. So, and it is sad how her story ends. Like, someone from, like, the rival gangs or whatever ends up coming to kill that dude. And, Rose, who, like, she says she sleeps with a gun. Either the lady just assumed because she saw Rose with it, because, like, Rose probably was like, oh my god, you're here to hurt me, like, I'm scared, and pointed the gun, and she's like, oh, you're trying to be a hero too. It's like, was Rose trying to be a hero because she is, like, a nurse, so she was trying to maybe protect her patient, or was it simply like, no, she was scared and trying to defend herself, or is it just like she had her gun not be, you know, so, like, there's no, like, clear way, like, clear knowing what was going through Rose's mind at a time. Like, oh, am I trying to protect my patient? Is it just me trying to make sure I get protected? Either way, did she just see the gun in Rose's hand and just assume the worst, ended up killing Rose? It's also sad because, like, well, Rose wouldn't have been in that situation if Alma hadn't, like, gone into a zone where it's like, right, it's a hot zone, and Alma, like, yeah, it's like, I think there's some guilt in that. So that's why later on when Odie shows up, she makes him a grilled cheese, but she's like, yeah, you should be getting home, kid. Good luck, you know? And it's just like, that's also, like, that's the thing. Everyone's trying to make it through this, you know? It's like I say, I think that's such an interesting element of just like, right, she's not here to be some superhero, like, oh, I'm going to resolve the whole situation. It's like, no, like everyone else is trying to get theirs, I'm just trying to survive. That's all it is. It is just a, you know, once again, it is a post-apocalyptic show, and that is all about survival. It's not like she's going actively out of her way to kill people, but she's being nice here and there because, like, Odie is a kid. It's like, right, Rose isn't here to fix you a grilled cheese sandwich, especially because it's like, right, Rose brought that kid back because he had cholera and saved his life, and so she made one of the first meals she made for him was a grilled cheese. And by the time like he got so associated with it that he'd always come by, you know, make a grilled cheese for her. And I think she says she just doesn't have the heart to tell him kind of like the truth of just kind of like the ugliness of it all. And then we had the whole thing with his grandpa, and he was like, and I didn't get it. He was like, oh, you shouldn't be stuck here with your stinking grandpa. I'm like, what? Now later on you're like, oh, that's what that was in reference to. Like, that was all inside of Odie's head. It's like, oh, go see that nurse. Like, I don't know, like, Alma didn't tell him the truth, so he probably thinks Rose is still alive, so he'll probably stop by Rose's place again. Or on some level, he knows, like, Alma was trying to tell him, like, yeah, Rose isn't here, you should go home. You know, but it's like, right, he has nothing to go home to. Like, Alma sent him home to that, because it is a thing of, she doesn't know his circumstances. She kind of doesn't care to know his circumstances. And so, it's also interesting, too, that he, like, likes people's middle names, which I thought was interesting, because he's like, yeah, I can't remember my own middle name, which is, like, very heartbreaking. Because the fact is, the way the body looks, it's been there a while. So, like, who knows how long his grandpa's been dead. So I guess each time he was trying to work up the courage to ask Rose, but, And maybe she knew on some level, like, he was asking for help, but, like, it's like, I don't know how much help I can really be. Once again, just everyone's kind of out for themselves, under, you know, part of the human condition, or just, like, trying to protect what's yours and keep what's yours. Because I even love that, like, it's like, right, the worst of humanity, and that was, like, people at their worst. That's why when Alma came here and saw people, like, celebrating, she's like, oh, this is people at their worst. It's like, yeah, but, like, the DMZ is kind of, it seems like its own special breed of, like, right, like, oh, and people are partying, celebrating, but it, like, shadows and covers up a little bit of, like, some of the terrible nature of what that place is. The, you know, the sort of locked off island, the locked off prison that it kind of is. Which obviously gave birth to people like Wilson, who just, he says, like, right, he was never, like, the most confident person. He was like, apparently they had their thing back in the day, but he was like, yeah, I know that he's like, even I recognize, like, oh, I was just the person in front of you, so something happened between them, but it's like, you were stressed out, you needed kind of, like, you needed a release, I just happened to be the right place at the right time, so that's all it was. But he's like, right, this version of me, Wilson, who I became, would have easily asked you out, Alma. I think he probably knew about the whole, he obviously knew about Parco and Skell, but he didn't say anything. Like, you could tell, like, he was lying to Alma, and I guess he's just like, right, I don't want you to know, like, because he was like, oh yeah, I remember your kid, cute kid. It's like, he probably was like, I don't want you to know what your son's become while you've been away from him, so. But it is interesting. He's like, oh yeah, like, I've got this group that'll do whatever I say. The fact is that they, he's like, yeah, like, that Maylene, she's kind of a psychopath. Real name's Jessica. Like, all you have to do to lead people is, like, baptize them and give them a badass new name. And, basically, all of this gave him the confidence to be the hero. Like, he was able to reinvent himself. Because she was even like, yeah, you were just, like, the orderly that was, like, selling drugs on the side. Like, for you to kind of become, like, essentially like a warlord right now, it's, like, wild. So, he had talked about, like, early days, like, his guardian got turned down time and time again by, like, a bank. He rolled up on that bank with a gun, told them to get out, and she was almost like, what did you do? He was like, oh, they got out. It's like, part of me is like, is he just saying that because he doesn't want to freak Alma out? But it's probably a thing of, no, there's a good chance. I mean, maybe he did just kind of let them go because he is just playing the role. He's not this bad guy. But I mean, you know, you play a role long enough, it becomes who you are. But maybe it's also like, right, playing pretend will eventually catch up to you. You know, it'll be interesting to see which way that kind of falls for him. At least they're setting it up to seem like, no, I reinvented myself. I become this badass. And maybe seemed like he might, you know, but it's like, kind of like a little bit like Ezekiel from The Walking Dead, you know? It's like, yeah, you kind of got stuck with this role, so you kind of go with it, but you're still yourself on the inside to some extent. And he's kind of found some middle ground kind of going forward, so I'm curious, is that the same thing for Wilson in this case or not? Because unlike Parco's all about, like, running the entire DMZ, and Wilson's like, nah, I got my little slice of heaven here in Chinatown. He's like, I've got these 12 blocks. That's all I need. That's all I want. I don't want anything else in the DMZ. They can fight over that as long as I got this. This is my little square. This is my paradise. I don't need nothing else. This is where my power reigns supreme. I don't want smoke with anybody else. I just want once again, protect what's mine and what I've got. But circling back to the Odie thing really quickly, I just thought it was something, that whole conversation about middle names kind of got to me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because, like, Alma doesn't like her middle name, and he's like, oh, I'll just call you Z for short. And I think that's so interesting, just because, if you don't know, just kind of on a personal thing, I mainly go by my middle name. My name is Michael. My middle name is Michael. My first name is Sean. That was always something that came up in school. People were like, who the hell is Sean? It's like, that's me. I thought your name was Michael. It is. It's my middle name. That's why I guess I never thought of it that weird that, like, I mainly went by... I know other people who went by their, like, nicknames that are based on their middle names. Like, oh, if your middle name's Andrew, you go by Drew. Like, that type of thing, right? So, if that was, like, your middle name, for example. So, I guess I never... It's not something that comes up that often, but it's because, like, most things I would just be like, yeah, my name's Michael. I'm like, I've always grown up being like, oh, I don't have a preference, but it's like, you can call me Sean, you can call me Michael, it doesn't matter, but more often than not, I'll respond to Michael, I'll introduce myself as Michael, so I've always had a preference, I guess, I've never claimed to have a preference. It just, that whole conversation, I was like, hey, that was just a little insightful to me, just because I was like, oh, I just thought it was interesting. I rarely kind of go by my first name. I guess I like my middle name better than I do my first name. I don't know, that's just me. Maybe on some level, that's why I am the way I'm. I thought that's where I thought that was kind of just an interesting little conversation piece, and then that's what immediately kind of started going through my mind at the time. We got a little piece of like history with Alma and Christian. There was like it was a younger him at one point. Like Alma was like yelling at him to open the door, and she busts in the door, and like his hands are like that. To me, like solidified that he was Scale. The moment he had like the bruised hands and he had his hands like wrapped in bandages, I was like, okay, so that was you. And then she like slapped him because I guess it's like he started following in his father's footsteps, and she didn't appreciate it because she's like, I'm not about to let you end up like your dad in jail and such. So I am curious, like, how, because he was with her all the way and then they got separated. So part of me wonders, did his dad find him and grab him before he left the DMZ? Or, like, did someone, like, what happened? Like, maybe he didn't want to leave his dad behind. Like, it's like, no, dad's here. Like, maybe he's always had, like, a little bit of a special connection with his dad. So maybe there's something there. Like, because she just had her back turned one moment. She was like, follow me, love. Keep your eyes forward. Like, just follow me, don't lose. But it's like, the moment her back was turned, he disappeared. I wonder why, though. So maybe we'll get some insight into that. And maybe it might play into, like, some of his misgivings towards his mom. Like, why he might have, like, beef and issues with her in that regard. But maybe we'll also get a little more insight into his upbringing. Into, like, that's why I'm like, I think he got into fights either just as because he got mixed up in, like, kind of a gang life like his dad did prior to all of this. Or it could just be like he just got in a tussle in a fight. But it's just the fact that she slapped him made it seem like it might have been something like related to his dad, like either like his in that gang world like his dad was, or something else. But there's also, like, you know, once again showing like who Parko is. The fact is, he's like, okay, Jordan, you in the 2-4. Oh, you don't want to be bought out. Okay. There's the door, Jordan. All you got to do is make it. So he goes fight with Scale, and Scale like kind of lets him get in a few licks. He's like, all right, you got me. Then starts leaning into him, and even Parko's right hand guy's like, you could have just shot him in the foot, made it easy. He's like, yeah, why waste a bullet? And Parko's dude's like, and it's like, okay. So Parko leans in, and is like, cool. So now you get to, I don't want you dead. I wanted you to be able to walk out of here. So you and the 2-4 are going to give me your support, and when I pay you off, you're going to smile and say thank you. So shows you kind of the gangster role that he's kind of got. Because everyone else fell in line except for the 2-4, because he was like, Jordan was like, the 2-4, we can't be bought. Yeah, and they're like, 2-4, yeah. And it's like, kind of meant nothing now when you kind of laid out like that. So it's kind of messed up that you kind of made your son into that, you know? That you would do that to your own son. I guess Scale doesn't have to worry about killing Michael, the guy that was on his list, ironically enough, just because the guy ended up getting blasted by, like, the military, like, as they were sneaking back in. So it's actually a good thing Alma was, like, further down, being like, oh, like, wanting to go back. So, and luckily they weren't going to cross into the DMZ, because it's like, right, don't even fire a shot across that. She's dead anyway, so. I wonder, is that cheetah that's there that was kind of Odie ran into early on, like, are those, like, some of the animals that probably, like, is it just because everything's kind of overgrown and stuff, because, like, there's not the care for the city as much anymore? Or is it just, like, are these animals that escaped the, kind of very, like, Sweet Tooth, is some of it kind of like animals that escaped, like, the zoo or something like that? Either way, this was just the first episode, and Alma left a message on Scale's wall, eyes forward, love, to be like, I'm here, this will be my sign to you, I'm here, I'm looking for you, because he obviously comes to that wall for his hit list. So I'm curious how he's going to feel about it, how Parko's going to feel about it, what those conversations are going to be like going forward. So will this have a happy ending? Probably not. I mean, maybe it could, but I don't see it having one. But I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this all takes us. There was, I want to say it was like 4 episodes I saw it's been released, which is like, that's a lot. But a lot of places have been into like, like at the beginning of the season, we'll drop the first 3 episodes. I've been kind of used to that with HBO Max, but 4 was kind of a surprise to me. I'm like, okay, so, but I've only watched this episode now, so I'm going to just be continuing, obviously, watching them one at a time. So, whether this will go up today, because it's Friday when I'm recording this, or this might end up going up Saturday or Sunday, I don't know. It just depends on. I want to put them all up at once. So if I can't get through all of them at once today, then I'm just going to wait till like Saturday or Sunday to put it up. So just kind of letting you know. If you're hearing this, that means they've all been up. They're going to be up within like 15 minutes of each other either way. So that's kind of a more me thing and not a you thing. So just that's kind of irrelevant recording wise. But regardless, I'm excited to continue and see where all this ultimately ends up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good